It is always a very highly anticipated segment of our morning program. Of course, the Richard B. Morning Show is on from 6 o'clock Jamaica time until 9 a.m. And at 7:05, we do have the big story. And that is usually a major current affairs story. It could be related to Jamaica or something happening in Jamaica or someplace else around the world. This morning, we are in fact taking a look at what is going on as the United States of America gets closer and closer to their upcoming elections. And we are in fact seeing where in many states it is being said, based on polls, that Kamala Harris is in the lead, and then there are others that Donald Trump is in the lead. This morning we are in fact going to be having two guests looking at this matter. But just to tell you, the 2024 U.S. presidential election is heating up, with Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump neck and neck just 6 weeks before the election. Recent polls show Harris with a small lead nationally, but a much smaller lead in crucial swing states. Now, according to the latest CBS News YouGov poll, Harris has a 4% edge over Trump, 52 to 48. However, her lead shrinks to 51 to 49 in the 7 states likely to decide the winner. Those states include Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and North Carolina. This morning, we're very, very pleased to have Dr. Karren Dunkley, who is a member of the Jamaican diaspora in the United States of America. Good morning to you, Dr. Dunkley.
Good morning to you and your listeners. Greetings. Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you. And we are also joined by Mr. Mike Hill, who is a Republican. As part of this conversation, we say good morning to you and welcome, Mike.
Good morning, Richard. Thank you for having me today.
All right, always a pleasure. Now, Dr. Dunkley, shall we start with you? Are the polls a good indication of what you are picking up, as you move around the United States, in your state in particular? Are you believing these polls?
Yes, I am looking at the polls. I do reside in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, right in Philadelphia. We know that the Commonwealth is a battleground state. We have seen both candidates, both election machines really come to the Commonwealth several times. In fact, the vice president was just here at a unique interview with the National Association of Black Journalists. One of the male journalists I happen to know as well through a mutual friend. And so what we're seeing is the post-debate momentum trended in favor of VP Harris. We have also seen where the economy is certainly on the ballot this election cycle, that post that election we have seen some bumps, some increase in how voters are perceiving her on the economy, whereas Trump had held that lead initially.
Okay. Mike, is it as close from your perspective as the polls are showing it?
No, I do not agree with the polls that are coming from the leftist mainstream media. And the reason why I say that is I was elected to Florida statewide office several times. And during an election, you can purchase polls. You can do polls on your own. And the data that is in polls can be manipulated depending on who you are polling. You can oversample one segment that you want to receive the responses that you are soliciting. So in other words, I believe these polls coming out of CBS News or New York Times or CNN, which are all leftist-leaning media, they oversample Democrat voters. And because they are oversampling Democrat voters, you get polls that are skewed and not necessarily accurate. I know, for example, as the good doctor just mentioned in Pennsylvania, you see that President Trump has been there several times, And each time his rallies are packed to the brim, and there are overflow crowds, and they're lining up for 8, 12 hours before his rally just to see him. On the other hand, you have the Harris-Walz campaigns that are not as well attended, and they are actually busing in people. They are paying people to be at these rallies. So, no, I do not think that these polls are accurate. And as the doctor mentioned, and as you said, this election is very much dependent on what our economy is doing. Our economy is not doing well right now. It is not, despite what most recently the Federal Reserve, which, by the way, should be abolished, the Federal Reserve is cutting these interest rates as a very political move. Cutting these interest rates right now is not a good timing because our economy is in such distress. Now, to fix that economy, President Trump said, I will cut taxes on various issues such as tips, Social Security, overtime. All of those things will stimulate our economy. And by the way, Vice President Harris has copied and mimicked and said she would do those same things if she were elected president, when in fact the Biden-Harris administration could do it right now.
I wanted to stick with the polls for a little bit longer, though, Mike. The fact you mentioned that you're not believing most of these polls. We also have other polls results that we have that are showing, for instance, the NBC poll is showing 49 to Harris, 44 to Trump. If not these polls, then what polls would you say that persons ought to be looking at? And do you have other polls that are showing differently in terms of who is in the lead and so on? Can you name those sources?
Yes. I know that there was a Fox News poll, and I'll have to admit I can't recall the name of the poll or who conducted the poll, but I have seen a poll that showed that President Trump had as much as a 70% favorable rating to Kamala Harris, 30% favorable rating. I have seen a poll like that more than once. And I'm sorry, I'll have to admit, I don't know the source of that poll. I didn't look at it in detail, but I have seen that poll does give Trump a better lead. And I also have seen that with Fox News polls. A little closer, much closer, in fact, but the Fox News polls all show that Trump has a lead right now of somewhere between 5 to 7 percentage points.
All right. Dr. Dunkley, what factors would you say, assuming that for the majority, persons are believing a lot of these polls that are coming out, what factors would you say have contributed to Kamala Harris's lead in the national polls, and why does her lead shrink in the swing states?
Yeah, so let me just say that we know that polls, just to respond to Mr. Hill, that they do carry a 5% margin of error. And he mentions the leftist media, but there may be individuals who would perceive Fox as being to the right of the media extreme as well. And so to counter what is described as leftist media with a citation from Fox really begs the question, who sits on the extreme of the polls? So I just wanted to nuance that for your listeners as well.
Thank you.
And also to your question about why do we see the lead? So I happen to work in what we know are predominantly conservative states. I do a lot of work in Florida, a lot of work in Utah. I'm there physically and on the ground. And I think what we are seeing is that it's personalities and policies, that there is something where the political base will remain with each of the candidates. Therefore, on issues such as abortion, on issues that are germane to each of the political parties, i.e. immigration. We see that the base who believe in the policies of the Democrats around immigration, that immigration is good for America, that it leads to jobs, it stimulates the economy, that immigrants come in and they do jobs that some or most Americans would otherwise not engage in, that immigration creates a more blended society, that they're going with VP Harris. We see that there are those who believe that unchecked immigration cannot bode well for the country, that it leads to an increase in crime, that it burdens already struggling infrastructure, that the base continues to support former President Trump. So those are those issues where we have really deep personal policies around, and the base sticks with those candidates, and that attributes certainly to where we see the consistent base. Mm-hmm. In the swing states, the independent voters, I'm a registered independent, mm-hmm. is the personalities. What happens and how do people perceive each of the candidates personally when they think about who they are and who they like? And I heard Mr. Hill cite it about the favorabilities. So if we go back, and I'm trying to pull that citation, I can send it to you, mm-hmm. that the unfavorability rating of Trump is absolutely higher than VP Harris. Okay. And that most voters tend to prefer or like VP Harris versus Trump. So I think that we have to nuance personality versus policies, that we see an even split. If you're going to lean, then you're carrying your base for either the Democrat or the Republicans. The people who will determine this election largely are going to be independents such as myself. And so we're watching to see the economy. We're watching to see what's going to happen in terms of how we are handling immigration. We're looking, for example, on what happens around issues such as abortion. We want to see in the day-to-day, is our life going to be better? We're looking at what they're calling threats to democracy on both sides, right? Because there is a tremendous scattering or scatterplot of threats to democracy coming from both the Democrats and the Republicans. Mm-hmm. And so we want this rhetoric to really tone down, and for the American people to be able to determine this election on the issues.
Okay. Hey, Mike, I don't know how you saw the recent debate between Harris and Trump. The polls that I've been seeing suggest that 63% of Americans believe Harris won the debate. But since the debate, would you say that Donald Trump's campaign strategy has shifted in any way? Many people saw him as very strong on immigration and the fact that the economy is not doing as well as it ought to at this time. Has the strategies shifted in any way whatsoever for Donald Trump? Or should it?
Well, I believe, yes, they have. They have shifted in President Trump's favor. And when you mention that most recent debate that they had with ABC News, it's now been a discredited debate. Anyone who watched it saw that it was the two moderators and Kamala Harris against President Trump. It was 3 against 1. And there is now a signed affidavit from an ABC whistleblower saying that sample questions were provided to Kamala Harris before the debate, which were not given to Donald Trump or his campaign. It was a very skewed debate in that case. Despite that, President Trump stood his own. Now, since then, there has been an assassination attempt against President Trump. What the left is not understanding is each time that these attempts on the life of the president takes place, his popularity increases. And why is that? Because Americans love an underdog. And the leftist media is making President Trump the underdog by their incessant attacks on him, constantly attacking him. and they have made him the underdog. And when they show that President Trump, when it's displayed that President Trump will stand up and fight and not quit despite what is happening, the American public cheers for that. And so I think he is becoming more popular as the day goes along. We're not concerned about how likable is he as a person. How easily does he laugh all the time? That is not what's important. What's important is a strong leader who is willing to do the things that will make our economy strong again, to stop illegal immigration. Yes, America needs legal immigration, but not illegal immigration in the way we have now in the past number of years of over 20 million illegal aliens coming in. And we're seeing the crime, the strain it is placing on our hospital system, on our education system. It cannot be sustained. There are Americans who will do jobs that they say that only illegals will take. How condescending is that to people who come here legally for immigration, if the only jobs available to them are jobs that are not, that Americans don't want to do? No, that is not correct. And then the abortion issue. Those on the right, I'm a Republican, those of us on the right do not believe that it is right to murder a preborn baby in the womb. That is not health care. That is not reproductive rights. It is murder in the womb. And as a Christian, I wholeheartedly stand against that. Here in the state of Florida, we are fighting vociferously right now against a ballot measure that would be on our ballot to make abortion part of our Constitution up until the moment of birth. And we are fighting that, and I believe that is going to fail in November.
Okay. I know that some of these issues that you raised would Dr. Karren Dunkley would want to be responding to, but because time is of the essence, I wanted to ask you, Dr. Dunkley, can Kamala Harris maintain her lead in the remaining weeks before the election from your perspective, or will Donald Trump close the gap?
Well, if the matchup again, when we saw 2016, that we really have to see the election, what happens on the day, the electoral college versus the popular vote. So I think that is important. I just wanted to make sure again that we focus on the facts, not what we believe the facts to be, not what we wish the facts were. But it's not enough, for example, first of all, as a Christian, I'm offended just to refer to anyone as an illegal alien. There's no such, God's creatures are not illegal. And so while we understand that we need a plan around immigration, we would recall that it would be former President Trump who himself imploded the immigration deal that was cut. He maneuvered the Republican machine to not agree to the, I would say, to the plan of action to address immigration. And so it's not sufficient for just to gloss over these different pieces and just say, well, here's what we're focused on. So let's just not invent our own facts. We cannot. Let us look for things as they really are. And if we are truly, as we say, Christians, then they will know we're Christians by our love, by how we're going to treat people who may be in need, by how we look at each other in terms of being open and listening. So I think we need to focus on.
Dr. Dunkley? Mike, are you there? Seems I lost both of my guests. Wow. That's unfortunate. Mike, are you there? Dr. Dunkley? All right. Unfortunately, we have lost both of them. Wow. I wanted to just give Mike one more opportunity, but time is of the essence. We're at 25 minutes on the downside of 7 o'clock, and so we have to pretty much abort the big story segment at this point. I'm sure that I'll be able to get both of them back on at some point in the near future, so we can continue this discussion, which should have really ended at least 7-8 minutes ago. However, you would have heard from both Dr. Karren Dunkley, and she's a member of the Jamaican diaspora, and we were joined as well by Mr. Mike Hill. He himself a Republican. Dr. Dunkley says she's an independent, and we were looking primarily at poll results and what they're showing as we get closer and closer to the elections in the United States of America, where most polls are currently showing Kamala Harris in the lead, although it is believed to be a very, very close election coming up. But she seems to have the edge over Donald Trump, some 4% lead and so on and so forth. Whilst it is showing also that Donald Trump is very strong in a number of states, 7 in particular, that are considered, deciders, so to speak, places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and North Carolina. Hope you enjoyed that discussion. Thanks again to our guest. Our apologies, I don't know exactly what happened, but we were really enjoying the conversation, and we look forward to hearing them speak with us again very, very soon.